Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be making a gorgeous wool skirt for winter with a vintage Ann Adams pattern, and we're only going to need 1 yard of fabric to get it done. Alright guys, this Ann Adams pattern I have had in my stash probably for close to 20 years at this point. It is a beautiful straight skirt, pattern 4514. And I have always liked it, but I never really had the right fabric or the right time to make it. It just never really seemed like one that I wanted to pull out of the stash. And this beautiful wool fabric that I have here, which is great, you can't really see it on camera very well, but it's got these beautiful pinks and golds running through it as well. I've had this for a couple of years. I picked it up from a seamstress who was moving out of town. She was decluttering her stash of gorgeous fabrics, and I managed to pick it up for a slammin' deal, pennies on the dollar. And I've just held on to it because there's really about a yard and a quarter of fabric, so not a lot, and I wanted just the right pattern. Well, it seems like there's a bit of serendipity going on, because as I was going through my stash and looking for something that would fit a beautiful 40s and 50s look, I pulled one of my old favorites out and realized 1 yard. This pattern only requires 1 yard of fabric, which works beautifully with this gorgeous wool fabric that I've got on hand. Not only do I think it's got a really beautiful texture, it's got some great colors running through it, it's a real wool, a thick wool, and so it will be beautifully warm for the winter, which we are headed into rapidly where I am at along the Rocky Mountains. It's getting pretty cold here, and I feel like I need to beef up my vintage wardrobe so that I can continue to look stylish while still staying warm. So let's go ahead and get all of our pattern pieces out of the envelope, make sure we've got everything that we need, get them pressed, and get them pinned to our fabric. Let's get stitching, guys. All right, my dears, this pattern happily is intact. It came out of the envelope beautifully with every single piece that we needed. The pattern pieces themselves, while this is in one of my older patterns, and while it has honestly been through quite a few moves and in and out of hot and cold, it is held up beautifully. There's no big rips, tears, wrinkles, or watermarks on this pattern, so I feel really comfortable going ahead and putting it onto the fabric, getting everything cut out, which I did. And not only did I get the pattern on here, I've got some fabric to spare. Now, this particular pattern, when I originally got everything out, I noticed that the skirt was pretty long. It was supposed to hit probably mid-calf, maybe a little bit lower, and I realized that wasn't really a length that I wanted to have. I'm pretty short, and so if I use that kind of mid-calf length skirt, I tend to look even shorter. So I did go ahead and fold up the pattern, and that might be contributing a bit to the fact that I've got quite a bit of leftover fabric. But hey, you can't really say too much bad about having fabric left over on a 1 yard pattern. So this pattern, it is both simple, I think, but may present a few challenges. And when I say simple, it really doesn't have a ton of pieces. We've got 3 main pieces. We've got 2 pieces for the front, and then just generally the back portion. We've got a standard waistband, but we do also have a cute little pocket, and that pocket is coming in on a side closure for the skirt that's very decorative. So it's kind of coming in here instead of on the actual side of the skirt. So we will be following the instructions closely to make sure the front of the skirt gets put together properly. But the overall design, I think, is going to be very, very cute. Instead of just setting a pocket into the side, they did go ahead and make it decorative. They added a little bit of flair, and I think it's going to be a really cute addition to my wardrobe. I'm pretty darn excited about it. So let's go ahead and start getting things together. We'll take a look at the instructions together and get step 1 underway. All right, right away, step one, we're going to be adding darts to the front portions of our skirt. Now it doesn't have us moving to putting darts into the back of the skirt until all the way back here. But I think we're probably going to do what we usually do, which is go ahead and sneak in all of our darts at the same time. So we'll do the darts for the front pieces and the darts for the two back pieces. And then we'll move on down to step two, which is where we begin the assembly of the front pocket. But first things first, let's go ahead and get these darts put into place here, which is going to create that beautiful shaping at the top of the skirt, defining the waist and working its way around the hips. Okay, let's take a moment to go ahead and look at our pocket construction. We're looking at our skirt, and this is the outside of the skirt. So you can see that's what we have showing. Here's our dart on the inside. This is the outside portion. Now we have our pocket. This is the flap that's going to be on the outside of the pocket. What is shown here. Okay. And now this piece eventually will come and it will flip up just like that. So we do need to sew it to the outside with the correct sides, the right sides together here. And now we need to go ahead and also add in the lining of our pocket, which is that smaller piece of fabric. Now I've chosen to use a very thin fabric from some leftover scraps. And I'm using this very thin, light fabric from our tea dress. I'm doing that because I really do want this pocket to be so light. I don't want a big bulge under the front of my nice straight skirt. So it's going to be shaped just like this. We're going to be placing this right over like this. And then we'll stitch along this line. And then once we flip this all inside out, the inside of the skirt here is where the pocket bag will be, and it will line up. All right, my dears, we have our pocket in place. So the next step is to move on to putting the two front panels together. Now for this particular pattern, we are going to be going ahead and doing top stitching on the outside, and it's recommending that you baste it and then stitch over. I don't really feel like throwing in tailor's tacks, so I'm just going to use a million pins. The other thing that I did to prep this is I did go ahead and iron and roll this under, so it's going to be hiding this raw edge, and it will have a nice, clean, beautiful look. Get our pins back in place and we'll get this stitched together. All right, my dears, I have gone ahead and put the back panels together. I just closed up the back here, and I did go ahead and press that seam nice and flat here. I stitched a tight stitch up to the base of where the zipper will go, and then I went ahead and did the widest stitch on my sewing machine where the zipper will inevitably go. That way we can just open that right back up to the end of the zipper. And we have our front panel done. And I think it's looking very, very cute. I'm really happy with how this is top stitched on. I think it's a nice effect. One thing I didn't love is that it does cause the material to flare out, and because this is a patterned material, it kind of opens up at the base, which I didn't love, but I still think it's going to look really, really nice. I really like this detailing of this side seam coming here. So what we need to do now is go ahead and put the front and back panels together, and then put the zipper in and the waistband. Once we have those done, we can go ahead and do a quick test fit and see exactly where we want that bottom hem to lie, and then we're done. This was actually a very quick make. I was concerned about this front panel being a little bit more difficult than it was, but it actually went together very nicely. So we're going to be cruising right along and having a skirt to wear in no time. Let's get the front and back pinned together. After a quick test fit of our skirt, I was finding that the material was riding up a little bit as I was walking around. And while this wool is lovely and soft, it's not particularly rough at all. I was concerned about how it might ride up when wearing tights or pantyhose. So I did go ahead and decide to line it, and you can see here I am cutting out the lining. I'm using the same pattern, the pattern for the back and the front. The main difference being that I cut the front out in a single piece and added the darts. From there, I am going to place the lining into the skirt, making sure that I leave an opening for the back zipper as well. And then I have also decided to cut this lining a little bit short just to make sure that it falls above the hemline of the skirt, ensuring that it doesn't peek out. All right, guys, let's wrap up on our Ann Adams pattern 4514 1-yard skirt. Now, I'm very, very happy with how this turned out. I am very thrilled that I went ahead and dug into my stash and used a fabric that I was saving for a special project. I think this particular wool fabric worked very, very well in a skirt pattern and in this particular skirt pattern, so I think that went great. Talking about the good and then also the things that I would potentially change in the future. For the good, I love the pocket detailing on this skirt. I think it adds a lot of interest to the front of the skirt, which lends itself well to being worn with tops that may be a bit more plain, a solid color button down or a nice solid sweater or even a vest. And I think having that pocket detail on the front really elevates it. It elevates the style and allows it to be worn in something like a printed or a patterned wool, which allows you to wear that softer plain top up by your face. So I love that. I absolutely love the fact that this skirt was made to be used with relatively low fabric and really relatively low waist. The pattern pieces did go together pretty well, and so I didn't have a lot of terribly large offcuts of fabric that became unusable. So I was very, very thrilled about that. Things I did change, things I would change. So I did add a lining to this skirt. The original pattern did not call for the skirt to be lined, and I think that is truly because it was meant to be a frugal pattern. This was meant for just 1 yard of fabric. You could get yourself a beautiful piece to add to your wardrobe with either little expenditure or with perhaps a leftover remnant from another project. But I felt with the material that I have, the fact that it is made of wool, that it really did need to be lined. Now, with different materials, it may not need to be lined, or perhaps with proper undergarments with a really nice thick slip, you might be doing okay. But for me, I wanted to be able to wear tights, to be able to wear some pantyhose and throw this on without worrying about the bottom of the skirt shifting up or bunching up as I walked around and as I wore it. So I'm very happy that I did make that change and that I did add a lining. It was a very easy fix, and I think it goes a long way. I did shorten this pattern, and as a result for myself, I think it was really closer to a 3/4 of a yard pattern. And I think honestly in the future, if I made this again, I might even go just a titch shorter on the skirt, or I would hem it up a little bit higher. I did do a very small hem at the end. It's a rolled hem. And so I could make up the difference by simply making the hem a bit deeper. But I do think it would look nice if it did come up a little bit more. This is a traditional straight skirt from the period, so it does almost kind of flare out at the bottom because it's made to nip in at the waist. I wonder if I made this again in the future, if I wouldn't want to tuck it in just a little bit at the bottom so that it had a little bit more of like a pencil skirt silhouette. I think the front detailing with a pencil skirt versus a straight skirt could be really, really stunning, and it could have a really lovely effect. So I might change that if I made it again in the future. The pocket on the front, I love the detail. The pocket's pretty useless. I think you know, maybe for the time period when you could, you know, pop over to the store and maybe get things for $1 or $2, you could go with a little bit of change, a dime, a nickel, a quarter, and really get something with it. You might not have needed a deep pocket, but this pocket that it has built in is really too shallow for a whole lot of anything. And I'm not sure, because of the angle it is at, if things will stay in this pocket. I do like it, but if I were to make it again, I think I might eliminate the pocket and just keep the detailing, or I would make the pocket just a little bit bigger or a little bit deeper coming down so that something could fall into it, like a little bit of money. The other thing that I did change, that I need to change a little bit more, to be honest, is the waist. The waist didn't quite nip in enough for me. I did do a test fit, and then I went ahead and put the waistband on. I threw it on my dress mannequin and double checked the waist, and it did work. But once I got it on, I realized it's just a little bit big. So I did add a belt at the end to some of the reveal pictures that I took to see how it would look, and I really like it. I think having a nice thick belt to break things up, to suck in the waist, was a really nice effect, and I like having the belt with this skirt. So I think if I made it again, of course, I would give myself the option of having a belt with it as well. Overall, I am absolutely thrilled with this make. I think it will get a lot of use in my closet. I really like this style, and as I said, I really love the front detailing. I am in love with Ann Adams patterns because outside of the waist being just a little bit big, everything else about this pattern really did fit beautifully, and it went together really, really easily. So I can't wait to kind of see what other Ann Adams patterns I have in my stash, to see what else I might like to make and what I might like to make from this time period. If you guys like hanging out in the sewing room, making vintage clothes, going through vintage patterns, and going through costumes and sewing costumes, please hit that like and subscribe button. I would love to have you along with me on my journey. Thank you guys so much. Bye.